Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
Well, you're going to stump me right from the get-go on this. What does it mean to me? I think it means different things at different times, but it's an interesting question. It's all-encompassing because it's something that I've managed and been super fortunate to be able to turn a passion into a profession. So for me, I think photography is an intersection of those two things. Something that I love, probably the one and only thing in my entire life that I'm good at. And it's what I do for a living. So that's, I guess, in short, what it means to me. And there's probably a lot of offshoots from there.
Michael. Okay, how do I say your last name? Kistler?
Yes, exactly.
What kind of name is that?
It's German. So German.
Kistler?
I guess if you insist.
How would you say it?
I wouldn't say it that way. And you know what's interesting, or actually probably not interesting at all, is I didn't grow up speaking any German. It's German on my dad's side, back a couple of generations. And I ended up getting so interested in the German language in high school that I studied at university. That's what I did my degree in, was German. And now I have little to no interest in it at this stage.
Have we met before?
I think we have.
We have? Where have we met? Where did we meet? Do you remember? I've got holes in my head.
Oh, I've got bigger holes in mine.
Okay.
I feel like we met in Hong Kong, and that's where we then ultimately connected on social media. And then there was one point, I don't know when it was, like a year ago or maybe even longer now. The pandemic has completely messed with my life timeline.
Yes.
As a lot of us, right?
Yeah.
So I think my recollection is that we met out at some Hong Kong event, but I couldn't tell you what that was or exactly when it was.
Okay.
And then that led to the social media and the interview, which I think we had one aborted attempt.
Yeah. But look, hey, here we are. I want to give the listeners a feeling of the situation. So your body right now is in...
My body is in Singapore and has been based. I've been bodily based in Singapore.
Okay.
That could be a good business name, bodily based. I don't know for what, but
depends what kind of business you're selling.
Forget that.
No, all of it's good.
And you're down south in the U.S. somewhere.
At the moment, I'm in Savannah, Georgia.
Wow.
So behind you is like a normal apartment. I can see the aircon is on because if you're in Singapore, you need the aircon. It's going to be warm. Yep. The background on me is where I can record, which happens to be in my sister's bedroom because I'm staying in Savannah with her at the moment. And I just love how happy accidents and things happen that allow people to meet. And here we are talking finally. I've been chasing after you for a long time, so I appreciate your patience.
I'm elusive.
Let's dive into the first photo because I'm really I know your images and this is gonna be great. Okay.
Don't be shocked that I don't even remember what I sent you. I mean,
that's totally fine.
And the selection. Well, anyway, I won't say any more on that. I'll because I think it will come up organically as we talk.
Of course, yeah.
My attachment to my images is maybe different than other people's. So we'll
okay.
See.
Okay, let's see which is the first one. Okay, well, I wish you could see it, so I'll describe it. So this is good, actually. You'll have to use your memory as I describe it as well. So it's called First Impressions, and it's a shot through. It looks like plants, like through the red pink flowers that they're super out of focus. And through the gaps in the foliage, there's a sign. It looks like Hong Kong, so it's a Hong Kong sign with like a Chinese tea house. So there's like red, like neon lettering on green,
Yep.
and then in the back behind that, you can sort of just make out a low rise, not a high rise, but a low rise. And you're shooting through the thing, and behind that is the sky. So I would guess, I don't know. It's not Sai Kung because I know Sai Kung very well. I don't remember that sign. So you remember this shot?
So I'm now checking the images that I sent you.
Okay, wait. Let me ask you a question. How many? If I were to look through your hard drive, how many photographs would I find? And please round up the number or round down, whatever's easier.
10,000, maybe.
Those are edited.
It depends how deep into the crevices of that hard drive you're going.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll say is I'm not a volume shooter, and I'm not
Okay.
I'm not super sentimental about images. Once I've shot something, I kind of move on to the next
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
Which is what I meant earlier. That makes me a little different than other photographers, I think.
That's a good point.
I think people get really attached to their own images, and I tend to move on fairly quickly to the next one. And I think part of that is just survival. It's like,
Okay.
if I think, or if other people think, oh, well, this image that you just shot, that's amazing, and that's, well, is that the best I'm ever going to do? Is that it? Where do I go from here? I don't know. It's probably an insecurity thing.
What?
Really.
No, well, look, I love how everybody thinks differently and everybody articulates it differently. So do you know what the image is about? Like, can you, like, you selected it for a reason, even if it's not, yeah, try to figure out why, because this one was the first image, which you called first impressions.
So this one is it's the pawn shop sign, right?
Okay. I don't read the characters. I don't, it could very well be.
And it's a reflection, right? I like how I'm asking you about my image.
Okay, so it's a reflection. Okay,
Yes.
so you're shooting down. Oh, okay, so it's a reflection?
So that's me, actually, which I'm sure a lot of people who have seen my work over the years are very tired of seeing at this point. That's me literally shooting into a puddle on the street in Wan Chai.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know your work. Yes. I know you like to shoot into puddles, and that's in Wan Chai? Okay.
That's in Wan Chai. It's a back alley off one of the main thoroughfares in Wan Chai. I can't remember which road, but anyway, it's a back alley that's connected to one of the markets, and in that particular spot, you've got those pawn shops throughout Hong Kong, and usually the signs are relatively high.
Yeah.
In this case, it was quite low, a lot closer to the ground, and so based on where that was in relationship to the puddle, it just produced a really interesting shot where I could shoot directly into the water on the street. And a lot of what you're seeing around it, kind of the this weird almost vignetting around it with the different colors, that's just trash on the street.
Amazing.
It's just everyday stuff.
Yeah,
which,
I got it.
If you had to sum up my work in 2 words, everyday stuff kind of does it. I'm really selling myself, aren't I? Maybe you and I should start another interview series or podcast called Everyday Stuff with Mike and Ran.
Okay, so take us through the evolution of you picking up a camera, realizing, okay, I want to use this thing as a very deliberate tool of expression, and how, sure enough, your images using reflections are a consistent sort of model that you use. So walk us through that.
Well, I picked up a camera for the first time when I was 18. and had no idea what I was doing with it, and then subsequently continued to have no idea what I was doing with the camera for many, many years. I just liked the idea of taking photos. And I think I liked the idea of, at that time, recording rather than creating. It was just a traveling and snaps, and everything was from distance,
Right.
which I think you see a lot when people start out in photography, is that you're shooting stuff that's way over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then now what I do is I shoot stuff that's really, really close,
Right.
generally, for
Okay.
some a lot of different reasons. And I have done photography on and off since I was 18, and again, not most of the time, not very well or with any real intent. And then I was in Tokyo for 10, probably closer to 12 years all in all, which is where I met my wife, where our daughter was born.
Oh
And it
wow.
was during that time that I guess got more serious about what I was doing, and I got pretty interested in a couple of other photographers that I think I would say influenced me a lot, although most people probably wouldn't see it in my work. But I got really interested in these two photographers and what they were doing. And then I got my first DSLR, so nicer digital camera, basically,
Yeah.
is the easiest way to describe that. And I just was out shooting in the streets of Tokyo all the time because I liked the energy and the vibe, and visually it was interesting. But I didn't know really what I was doing with my camera. I was learning as I went,
Yeah.
and that was the genesis of it. That's when I thought, okay, maybe there's something in this that I could do for a living. And then that's when I started to hone what I think now has become a style,
Hmm.
which we talk about a lot in photography. I do a lot of mentoring of other photographers. That's actually a big part of what I do in my business. And one area I work with young and emerging developing photographers on is style.
Okay.
What does your work look like? And so it's a really long-winded answer to your question. Now everybody's sleeping.
No. 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 No.
But it's that was how I developed the style that I've got now. And I think style over time, you have all these little twists and turns in it. But I've always liked movement, motion, abstraction, pops of color. And then more than anything, I think what I don't know if I tried to do it initially or I just did it. I'm trying to shoot just stuff that's around me, that everyday stuff. I'm not going
Sure.
out of my way to go to a particular place or necessarily shoot a particular thing. It all kind of evolved from what are my everyday surroundings,
All right.
and that's also how I teach and mentor photography, is by developing your eye based on what is in front of you every day, rather than seeking out these grandiose shots and moments. And
But okay, so I want to. So, where did you grow up? What part of the world did you grow up in?
um not probably terribly far from where because you're based in Canada now, right?
Well, yeah, in Vancouver. Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up in Minneapolis. I guess not that close, but
Okay.
Minneapolis would be more like a Toronto counterpart, I guess.
Right. Well, hearing you talk, okay, here's what popped up in my mind.
Okay.
One is that you're obviously somebody who's thought a lot about photography. I think the fact that you've moved over to mentoring other photographers, I think is, a sort of maybe a natural evolution, because you want to, we teach as humans, we're like teaching animals, really.
Right.
But the thing is, in a way, by putting yourself in Tokyo, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, I mean, these are really like you don't have to go far to find, the grandiose when you compare it to your formative years of growing up in Minneapolis. And it's not to say that it's the exotic and all that stuff, but it's more like because you're coming at it with a more adult eye.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you're just entering a scene, looking at it kind of like as a person who's already kind of developed their eye. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I kind of because it's totally true that you have a very it's funny because you're saying your style, you're really trying to use the word style a lot, right? And it's true that you have a totally unique style. But as you were speaking, I was thinking, well, I was just substituting the word voice for style, in the sense that, this is like this is just, and it has its own warmth and its own color. And it's true that, like, unlike many photographers, you really dive into color in ways that, I don't know. I mean, I find it like you really maximize color.
Do you think sometimes it's too much? Like,
No.
color can be overwhelming.
Well, it could be, it could be garish. Yeah, it could be garish.
Right.
It could be, but I don't know. I don't think it's that. I think it's more like this is part of your voice or your style or it's just your expression. So what's interesting is that there is a common thread linking all of your images, which is something. What's great is that you don't have to worry about it. Like, it's not for you to figure out. It's for somebody else to look and say, "Oh, look, this is what I see," and then you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that."
Right, and I'm smiling because you've hit on something that I think is really important, which also relates to the attachment or lack of attachment to somebody's individual work, and that's as soon as I release that work, and whatever that means, right? It's not like I'm releasing an animal into the wild, but that work goes on social media or it's for sale as a fine art print. As soon as people can see that and consume it, it's not mine anymore.
Okay.
And
yep.
It's mine in terms of copyright. Yeah, okay, technically. But it's in terms of interpretation, does it mean something? Does the aesthetic have a value? That's not for me really to decide or dictate or to try to influence other people. I create it. I put it out there. I may or may not have a feeling about it. I probably do, but it doesn't matter that much. What you think about it is important.
Yeah.
Not what I think about it. I made it, so I'm done.
Okay. Well, since you said you're done, I think I'm going to use that as a segue to the next
You're
photo.
like, bye-bye.
We're done. Okay, we're done. We're out of here. This one is called Inflation. Inflation, and it's black and white.
This now I'm with you. I actually know which image we're talking about.
Okay, and it's considering all the things that I said for the previous one. Okay, so this one's in black and white. So stick it in my eye. Thank you. It's a black and white shot. What's really in focus is a woman, a silhouette in the foreground, holding a small racket. It's like, I don't know what the racket is for. It's not like a badminton racket, but it looks like a funny racket. She's in a room or a space with another 2, 4, 6, 7, maybe 8 other women. You could tell because they have ponytails. They're enclosed within this one kind of mezzanine, I guess. And behind is the Hong Kong skyline, which is so signature, like with the Bank of China Tower and all of that stuff, and the IFC, and so it's funny because the foreground looks to me super current, like super, what's the word, like contemporary, and the background, even though it's skyscrapers that were built in the past, say 20 or 30 years or 10 years. It's got the black and white feel on my monitor, at least, that it's kind of washed out. It feels almost like an old print. So it's really a strange image. So take it away. Inflation.
Inflation, the story of our lives, right?
Is it? I have no idea what you mean.
That's amazing. That probably the best comment ever.
Sorry, the story of our lives. I guess in an economic sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. And you know what's funny is, I don't know if I have any idea what I mean. People will ask me, like, what does that caption or what does that title mean? And I'm like, I don't know what it means. It struck me. There was something about. And then it's interesting for me to hear you talk about, like, just to describe the photo, what you see in it. That's
Yeah.
quite interesting for me. Not even, I like this, I don't like it, who cares? You're just describing what you see in it.
What I notice. Yeah.
That's right. And what prompted me to shoot that photo was a lot of the same stuff. It was what I saw. And then the combination of various elements, and then and then you get into the technical side of how to make it look a certain way.
Yeah.
The caption just struck me based on tall buildings, big, well, I'm not going to say thriving metropolis at this point, formerly thriving metropolis that is now stuck in first gear. We don't even want to get into that.
So look, you make that comment, and then the title is inflation, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, there we go.
Right.
Okay, so you just open a can of worms. I love it.
That's it. But there's usually a lot of stuff running through my mind, and my titles and captions get inspired by just sound bites, something that will just pop into my head as I look at a scene.
Yeah.
And I don't sit down and think about the captions and the titles. It's just something that comes to me. A lot of the time I've been listening to music, so I'll get inspired by a song I'm listening to, or a lyric will trigger something. This image I shot at the M Plus Museum, so the fairly newly open museum
okay.
in Kowloon. So the view is, as you said, it's like a mezzanine level. They're outdoor doing this. What I'd never seen before this is this weird, it's not weird, but it was different. Like a dance where the ball is actually attached to the racket. So it sticks to it. And then they're dancing and moving the racket with the ball. And then every once in a while, there'll be a move where the ball, leaves the racket and then comes back, but it sticks to the racket. So they're doing a semi-choreographed dance type thing to music.
How perfectly
and it's
strange.
Outside the museum. So I'm shooting from inside through this big piece of glass through a window.
Oh, okay.
A window, also known as a big piece of glass.
That's,
for all of you listening out there, that's how I describe it.
Yeah. Okay. So So what are you shooting with? Let's geek out a little bit.
I am shooting with a Canon 5D Mark IV.
Okay.
And I shoot almost exclusively on prime lenses.
Right. Okay.
So 35 millimeter prime, 50 millimeter prime is my go-to. For those who don't know what a prime is, again, if we're geeking out a litlittle bit, and I'm not a kit geek. I don't care a lot about equipment, which also makes me a bit of a strange photographer, because male photographers love equipment. I mean, it's just they're obsessed with it, and I'm a male photographer who doesn't love equipment. For me, it's a means to an end. It's like just a tool to get me. So 5D Mark IV, prime lens. Prime is a lens that is fixed, which means in order to change your focal length, you can't zoom. You have to physically move.
Yeah, or change the lens. Yeah.
Yep. Or change.
What's
the
interesting
lens.
is that this lens, if you were to ask me, it was probably a 50 millimeter, because it's not super wide. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not 50 millimeter. Maybe it is 35 millimeter. I don't know.
This one is 50. I shot this on the 50.
But I find it. I really want listeners to check out the photos on YouTube or on the website or wherever they are, because you're a really talented photographer who, even if people don't get it or don't like it, there's some interesting stuff going on. And I kind of feel that the complexity of our brain and our thinking, where you put something random, right? Like you make a photograph, which is like like you just happen to pass by when you see the scene, and then you make the decision to shoot through the glass in this way, so they're all in silhouette. Mm-hmm. And then for whatever reason, the cells in your brain decided to kind of come up with inflation. And then there's some interesting connections going on there in terms of How long before you left Hong Kong did you make this photo?
Good question. Not long. Probably a few months, 3 months, I'd say.
Okay, but you knew you're going to leave. It wasn't like
I can tell you exactly if it matters. Let's see. Yeah, shot it in early July. So not even a few months. We about a month before.
okay. But now you knew you were moving.
Yes.
Okay. I don't think there are I think there are happy accidents, but
Mm-hmm.
I think there's always something very fascinating about people who talk about how things happened, and then you go, oh, wait a second, so at that moment you're at the museum, which is a beautiful space, and between, I would just explain from the photograph, like where what you're shooting, like in the foreground, these women with these really strange rackets, and look, I've never seen anything like it, and it sounds completely bonkers, but like there's also the harbor, there's the water between them and Hong Kong Island with a crazy iconic amazing cityscape, and then you've got the hills of Hong Kong Island, and then you've got the sky, which is a wash, and it's not super high contrast, so it's like you see the clouds, but it's all kind of, and it's all kind of this gray, faded gray, and this absolute black of the women in silhouette. So if I were like a really talented psychologist, which I'm not, but if I were, what would I discover from this photograph in terms of your thinking?
That's a good question. Um, I mean, one, I think you would discover that how I shoot probably reveals that in the actual moment I'm not thinking a lot. I'm just creating. So I'm also just at the at the risk of not being disingenuous. That wasn't a new spot for me. So what happens a lot in my photography is that I discover spots. Part of the reason I need to do that is because I work with so many people out shooting in urban areas, and I need plenty of places to go and shoot. So I find spots that are conducive, that have potential. Potential is a word I use a lot for that. There's areas and spots that have potential,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll shoot it, and then I'll go back and I'll shoot it again. I'll shoot it again. I'll shoot it again, which is kind of antithetical to what a lot of people think of in street photography, which is that you're always moving. So you're walking and shooting and walking and shooting and walking and shooting, and every moment that you shoot has to be this candid,
Huh. Okay.
Cartier-Bresson decisive moment, and it's got to be organic. And honestly, that's all bullshit. It's completely untrue. Good photos come from planning and organizing, combined with being spontaneous and reacting to real time
Okay.
events that happen in those spaces. So, what would you, as a psychologist, uncover? I don't know. I think I try to make sense of my life, and that's not going well since I'm 51 and still haven't figured it out. But I'm trying to make
Like all of us.
I'm trying to make sense of my life, and my life as it fits into places that I live, my surroundings, in the context of photography. I think there is a big psychological element to what I do, but I'm not sure I could explain it any better than that.
Hmm. That's okay.
But what I produce is a reaction to the environment that I'm in and the things that I see. And then usually the caption, whether people pay attention to it or not, if you really did pay attention to it, it probably would give you a little bit of insight into my thinking. At the same time, I might not be able to articulate exactly what that is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that scene, there's a traditional Hong Kong Chinese element to what the women are doing, albeit in a modern context, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we've all seen, groups of women in parks doing, kind of orchestrated dance to music, and that's something that you see within the culture in different places. So to have this outside the M Plus, which is a very modern museum with modern architecture, then the skyline in various stages of development and growth, as you pointed out. You've got some stuff that was built a long time ago. You've got some stuff that was built recently. So a lot of contrast going on. And then on top of it, you've got Hong Kong in a very, very unusual state of circumstances.
In history, yeah.
Yep, exactly. We've lived history there in the past. It's going to be very interesting to go back and look at Hong Kong, for people like us in another 5 or 10 years, because I think when you live it, it's quite hard to look at it objectively. I've got a huge amount of resentment toward Hong Kong at the moment.
Join the club.
Which we could get into, and I think anybody would understand that. The flip side of it is I love the place. So it's a place that I spent 8 years and 8 very important years in my life, personal life, and in my professional photography life. Most of what I built business-wise happened in Hong Kong.
Okay.
So I've got a lot of mixed feelings about the place, and I think all of that goes into my work.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see what's going to unfold, because I find you to be a very fascinating artist, like in terms of how you use uncertainty and not ambivalence, but how you use like the unanticipated moments. And I just find it really interesting in that you can really you really do use uncertainty and abstraction, not as aesthetic abstraction, but just abstraction in terms of ideas, and you just kind of welcome that, which I think is not usual. It's not very common.
Maybe not. I don't know if it's common or not. I think you're right. There's maybe a good word is ambiguity.
Yes, sorry, that's it. Yes,
they're all the A words, right? You and I we should make a list of all the cool words that start with A: abstraction, ambiguity, ambivalence.
It was definitely ambiguity, definitely.
And,
Thank you.
And that is for sure an important part of what I put out there. Is I want it to be a little bit ambiguous. I don't need to tell you everything, and I don't need to show you everything. So another great word, since we're on A's, is allusion, with A, not I, and alluding to something in an image, just like writers allude to things in their writing. They don't always need to tell you everything. Part of that should be for us to work out. So
okay,
yeah,
that's great.
And I think that abstract element does lead to a lot of the other A words.
Right. Okay, well, let's pick photo number 3 and see what A words will be inspired. Aha! Okay, Road to Nowhere by Michael Kistler.
Super subtle, right? Road to Nowhere.
What are you talking about? Okay, so the photo is basically it's very dark. Right? In terms of what the light is pointing, is essentially, it looks like an arrow. So right in the middle, at the bottom of the photo, is it's like this road that's basically leaning towards her. Like there's not a horizon, but basically like the sort of the horizon point of the perspective, and along that are these stalls, and it could be like it's like a night market. It could be ladies' market at night. After the rain has settled, because and it's at twilight. So and then the buildings on the right are kind of creeping up to the top of the frame, and you could just see the sky, this dark, rich purple. But it's really interesting the way the path through the stalls and then the lights on the side of the street of the shops create this perfect arrow, really, leading you through it. Road to Nowhere.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting to hear you use the term arrow, because now I see it, but that wasn't on my mind at all.
Okay.
So this is a place in Mongkok where you can shoot that market area as you described from a footbridge, elevated footbridge. So you've got the perspective. I've shot that quite a few times, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
spot that I include on workshops that I've done in that area in Mongkok and in the Kowloon area. What's interesting about that is that there are no people.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't notice that.
So that's what grabbed my attention. I'm just re-looking at that photo now with my old man glasses on to make sure I can really see it. Normally, and when I say normally, pre-COVID, that would have been absolutely jammed with
Ah,
people.
you're right. Absolutely, shoulder to shoulder.
Yep. Even on a rainy day, it would just be people with umbrellas, right? It'd
Yeah.
be filled with people. And what I saw, of course, during the pandemic, which we all did in different places, is the absence of people. So, in this particular occasion, it was a combination of it had rained really hard, and you had the effects of the pandemic. So, it was really me just wanting to capture a street that I'm pretty familiar with and I'm accustomed to having look a certain way. It just looked completely different to me. I underexposed it intentionally, so I shot it darker to enhance that mood. So that was done intentionally. So the way we shoot things should be based on how we want the photo to look, not necessarily
Yeah.
what we see, although it certainly can be a combination of those things. But I always think the way you use your camera setting should be based on how you want your photo to look, not necessarily on a perfect reproduction of the scene.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's me underexposing it, adding to the moodiness, adding to the darkness, the emptiness. It's not a happy photo. I don't think
No, I don't think so either.
it's pretty desolate. It's pretty, it's but it's got beauty in it. And also, I mean, I think unhappy things can also be beautiful, right? You don't,
Mm-hmm.
there's an aesthetic there.
Yeah.
So Road to Nowhere is also a Talking Heads song, and I'm a Talking Heads fan.
Right.
So I'm sure that factored into it. We're on the road to nowhere.
Funny you said that because the thing I was blurting out at you, I was gonna interrupt you with, which I have a bad habit of interrupting guests. Sorry, but it's not an interview. We're just having a conversation. But
That's your job. You should be
yeah,
interrupting me all the time.
I was gonna ask you. I was just like, do you like Rage Against the Machine?
Interestingly, I don't dislike them, and I had a period where I listened to them a lot. It was a long time ago, many years ago. And it's funny because I just listened to a couple tracks by them in the last month, and it was probably the first time I've listened to them in 10 years. Yeah, so do I like them? Yes. Do I actively listen to them? No.
And I think you're right. It's a funny thing that David Byrne, in a way, the older I get, is in a way. It's not like, oh, you're just getting older, so you're getting softer. Because I still love Rage Against the Machine. But it's funny that when I saw like one of the questions that popped in my head, the connection I made was of music and
Mm.
of almost anger, and then so where does your aesthetic land? Like, what kind of artists do you like? What are you drawn to?
I'm drawn to abstraction. I'm drawn to ambiguity. If we go back to our new favorite
Yep.
word, probably the two biggest influences on my photography within photography came from a Japanese photographer, Daido Moriyama, who's now in his 80s, black and white, gritty, very, very often abstract, ambiguous, quite heavy contrast, dark. And then Saul Leiter, who was an American photographer who passed away probably 10 years ago. who was one of the first photographers to be working actively in color when most photographers of his era were doing black and white. And his stuff is so you've got Daido Moriyama, dark, gritty, heavy, moody. You've got Sol Leiter, abstract, yet still fairly dark with, a lot of color pops. But I certainly wouldn't call his work happy. And those two probably influenced me the most.
In a way, you've really articulated and expressed a very, and I know that because you've had to talk to explain yourself to others in this sort of mentor-mentee relationship, you've gotten a clearer understanding of where your process, where your tastes sit, all that stuff. So, where your style sits. So it's really interesting because very you're very aware of what makes you tick.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think I know who I am as a photographer. And that's what that doesn't mean is that I'm better than anybody else or that I'm fully realized. But I know what my style is, and I can articulate that. And as you
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm pretty good at talking about it. But part of that is because I have to be.
Yep.
Because in working with other people, I have to be able to explain what I do, how I do it, how I got to where I am now,
Mm.
and I'm working with them to develop the same types of stuff. One of the things that early on I try to work with photographers on is being able to articulate in an elevator pitch
Oh, okay.
what it is that they do. So you've got 20 or 30 seconds tops.
Hmm.
Tell me who you are as a photographer and describe your work. It's very difficult to do,
Yep.
but it's also very difficult to do that in almost anything.
Yeah.
To describe what you do in a short. You don't want to say soundbite because that sounds a little, I don't know, whatever, lacking. But
Mm-hmm.
can you get the main points across of what you do and who you are and whatever you do, so that people get it? And then that would then, of course, lead them to other questions that they would have about what it is that you do.
Okay, so it's another shot. It's within, I'm assuming, Hong Kong. It could be China. The characters look like traditional Chinese characters. It's very Hong Kong scene. You have two older, not older, but like guys in their 30s plus at the bottom right, walking in silhouette, and you see reflection on the top of the hood of a car.
Mm-hmm.
The guys are walking under scaffolding, which if you've never been to Asia, you just think scaffold. Yeah, yeah, whatever. I know what scaffold is. But in Asia, scaffold is made out of bamboo because
Yep.
that's the cheap stuff that people can use, and it's everywhere. And it's so the scaffolding is just this bamboo stuff that they're put against these like shops. It looks like a money change shop, and then there's another other. I don't know what the other shops are. The image has a lot of yellow and a lot of red. It's at night. It's very moody. It's very somber. It's very, but it's very warm because you really know where you use color in such a popping way, and you see the. So on the one hand, you have the scaffold, which is all like vertical and horizontal lines in kind of reflected red and orange, but the signs are also in red and orange and a bit of white. But because they're the traditional Chinese characters, they're also boxy, and the font is very kind of like sharp lines of vertical and horizontal. So it's mostly in focus, and it's quite great. It's called the money shot.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's fun to hear you. I was just looking at it a little bit myself. It's fun to hear you describe it because what I realize actually from talking to you is how little I hear people talk about my work outside of I like it or don't like it, or the little Instagram sound bites of "that's
Ah,
awesome,"
right, right, right.
"awesome," "amazing," "brilliant."
Yeah, but no deconstruction.
No, nothing. So the bamboo scaffolding, agree with you, and most people would just dismiss that or disregard it. It's such an
What?
integral. But I think in Asia, it's such an integral element
Yeah.
visually. And I think a lot of what I do in my color and night photography is I'm showcasing iconic elements of the urban landscape, of the
Uh huh.
cityscape, of
Uh huh.
whatever you want to call that. So in this, as you pointed out, I'm just going to repeat what you said and waste anybody's time. But it's the bamboo, it's the Chinese characters, it's the neon. Not all of it's neon, some of it's LED, but it's
Yeah.
whatever. We'll say neon because it's easier to grab
Good
onto.
point. Good point.
And then the people are, as they are most of the time in my work, they're abstractions.
Yeah.
You can only guess at their identities. It's quite interesting for you to say, in their 30s. I mean, how do you know? You don't
No,
know,
no. I
but
was, I
that's
was saying more the. I mean, adults. So I meant was
yeah. But
adults.
but but that's interesting because you have to guess at it based on
Yeah.
what you see.
Yeah.
Most of the time, unless I'm doing an obvious portrait shoot, people in my images are, they're going to be silhouettes, they're going to be shadows, they're going to be blurred abstractions of some sort. And that's because the identities aren't important to me.
Right.
What's actually important to me is the context,
Yeah.
the environment, the surroundings, the structure, right? For me, the big thing is, how are people interacting with the structure of a city or of a place? And
Yeah.
so
Okay.
you've got all this stuff, right? The buildings, the neon, the bamboo, the cars, and then the effects of those, like the reflections and abstractions. And I'm not the least bit interested in who those people are,
Right.
and
Right.
that's why I presented them as you see them, unidentifiable, anonymous. How do people come and go in a city, those fleeting moments where they collide with the urbanness around them, and then they're gone? That's interesting to me. It's poetic. It's, whether it's happy or sad, I don't know, but it is what it is, right?
Okay. Well. Okay. So let's just to bring it back a little bit, where you said, give the elevator pitch, right? So, like for the podcast, shooting it raw is basically born out of photography. And the premise is, if life really is a gift, how do we make every second count? And what I do is I talk to people to say, okay, look, you have this one life. We 1 second after the next, and you make choices about how you're going to spend them. And in your case, which I find fascinating because it's true. Like, just like when I think about all of your photographs, like, first of all, in your case, you were drawn to making photographs, but I don't think of you as like a landscape photographer. It's not like you make these beautiful landscape. Maybe you do, but I haven't seen beautiful landscapes.
I do not.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get
I
that
do
feeling at all.
not. Yeah.
But you really do use color and abstraction, and it's an interesting commentary on people. Because, for example, these two guys walking at night, you call it the money shot. And like, is there a sex shop around where they are? I have no idea. But could
Well,
be.
well, there probably is.
If it's in Mongkok.
Yeah, there probably is. I mean, the money shot is more of, that was just a quick. It's the dollar sign with the exchange bureau.
Yeah.
I did think I was quite happy with the outcome of that shot. Everything
Uh-huh.
came together quite nicely. Okay, got it, nailed it, money shot. Again with the currency exchange reference and all the graphics.
Is
And
it selling well?
um not
Sorry,
particularly.
I had to
No, I
ask.
mean, great question. I have sold a few,
Yeah. Okay. Oh, really? Awesome.
which is great. But yeah, I mean, you would think calling it the money shot would be an instant, I'd sell it out. Somehow it doesn't work that way.
You should really promote it during Chinese New Year.
Yes, you're right. Or maybe I should rename it, retitle it.
Yeah, call it Kung Hei Fa Choi.
Yeah, to In Search of a Sex Shop, maybe.
I don't know, man.
No, bad idea.
It's okay.
No, I'm just it's interesting for me because again, hearing how you describe my work and use of color, and one criticism I've heard of my work is that it's not personal enough. I need to introduce more of my personality into it, or I need to have more of a story that goes into the creation of my images. Well, you just spent an hour with me, and it, at some point down the line, maybe you and I will meet up again and we'll have a beer, whether that's in Canada, US, Singapore, Hong Kong, who knows. And I would be interested to hear what you really think about my story, because I think I put a tremendous amount of myself into everything that I do, into my shooting, into the mentoring work that I do with my clients. But I don't think I need to have lived on a park bench in Moscow in the middle of winter for 3 months in order to validate what I do.
Okay.
So what's my story really versus a narrative that I could create to make my work a little bit more interesting or sellable? Those
are two different things.
I think they are two different things.
Michael, Jennifer, what should I call you?
Zoe.
Zoe. Okay. So Mike. Okay. So the thing is, it's really interesting to me because part of what you're doing in being a mentor is you're sitting with people and you're saying, okay, look, are you going to do this? Are you going to be a photographer? Are you going to commit to it? So now this is how are you going to spend your time? So the podcast is about inspiring people to really appreciate how life is a gift and we can make every second count. And what's interesting about photographs is that photographs are mostly measured in fractions of a second.
That's right.
So I'll give you the mic. First of all, promote your website so people can go check it out, and then explain what is this deep satisfaction at a deeper level of committing to making photographs in the way that you do.
Well, I'll start with the second bit, which I guess it's the only thing that really makes sense to me. So as I said at the beginning, I think I've been lucky enough to be at an intersection of doing what I love and I'm good at, and also being able to make a living doing that. And there's nothing more satisfying to me if we distill all of this down into the act of taking a photograph. I like how you described it time-wise. I mean, it's fractions of seconds. And it's even in those fractions of seconds, what you're doing when you're taking or making a photo, which is also a really interesting conversation, taking versus making, is you're absorbed in that moment, which is actually a lot briefer than a moment.
Right.
We call them moments. So you saying that makes me think, they're not really moments at all. They're much smaller than that. But you're absorbed in it. And in this day and age, with all of with life, with distractions, with social media, with coming out of a 3-year pandemic and time just kind of warping on all of us, what I love about photography and the act of shooting when I'm in that moment, again, I'll just say for lack of a better term, is I'm in it. I'm not in the past. I'm not in the future. I'm in the present, and I'm making that second count. So you talking about making every second count, I surely don't make every second count, but those seconds do count, and they mean something. And that's probably, if anybody had a takeaway, it's the value of photography in that sense for getting you into moments, whether you're trying to record them, okay, or preserve a memory or create a piece of art. That doesn't matter, but you're in that at the time.
Michael Kistler, awesome. That's great. Thank you so much. So,
Thank you.
I want everybody to check out your website. It's in the show notes, just so that they can see really the. I'd love for people to listen to this and have a picture in their heads of what you look like and of what the work is like or whatever, and then to look at it and then go, oh, because it's so good.
Thank you.
So good.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It was fun. That was an enjoyable hour for sure.
Well, thank you very much. Every second of it for me was great. Thank you. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good morning, and I'll have a good night.
Talk to you soon, I hope.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.